Welcome back to the archive. Previously, the Emperor united Terra and forged an alliance with Mars. But the Imperium still lacked the leaders who would command its armies, the warriors who would conquer the stars, and the campaign that would unite the galaxy under one banner. Today, we'll uncover the Emperor's greatest creation, the Primarch Project. We'll witness the birth of the Space Marines, the First Pacification of Luna, and the opening chapter of the Great Crusade. The Primarch Project was kept under the strictest secrecy, as it was the Emperor's greatest asset in the coming war against the galaxy. The project had begun during the Unification Wars and involved the creation of 20 superhuman beings, their upbringing, and their preparation to command the armies of the Imperium. The Emperor used his own genetic material combined with the DNA of various animal species. One recovered Primarch genome sample, designated Subject 6, contained DNA resembling that of a wolf or canine, possibly hinting at the Primarch of the Space Wolves Legion. However, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The Emperor did not simply need superhuman commanders. He needed demigods, beings who would inspire awe, fear, and respect among their followers. Drawing upon all of his sorcerous knowledge, the Master of Mankind bound fragments of power into the souls of his sons, endowing them with extraordinary courage and unmatched charisma. The 20 infant Primarchs were kept within specially designed incubation capsules, housed inside a vast underground laboratory beneath the Himalayas. The use of sorcery in their creation may have left the Emperor's sons especially vulnerable to the influence of the ruinous powers, so protective wards and arcane symbols were inscribed upon their capsules and throughout the entrances to the laboratory. Yet the Chaos Gods uncovered the Emperor's greatest secret. They came to suspect that the Master of Mankind would not only break the promises he had made to them, but that the creation of the Primarchs could also tip the balance of power in favor of order. In response, they unleashed the storms of the warp upon Terra, their energies tearing into the Emperor's laboratory, despite its formidable psychic defenses. Nevertheless, the Chaos Gods failed to kill the Primarchs within their capsules. Instead, they scattered them across distant worlds throughout the galaxy, exposing each infant to the energies of the Imperium as they traveled. Fortunately, every Primarch landed on an inhabited world where they could be found and raised. The Emperor could sense that his sons were still alive, but he had no way of knowing where they were. From that moment on, recovering the lost Primarchs from the darkness of the galaxy became one of the highest priorities of the coming Great Crusade. But such an ambitious undertaking required an army of unprecedented strength. The Imperium already possessed a conventional military made up of ordinary human soldiers, but that alone would never be enough. As I mentioned earlier, by this point the Emperor had eliminated nearly all of the Thunder Warriors. The Adeptus Custodes were few in number, and many of them no longer left the Imperial Palace. The Emperor once again needed the vanguard of his armies, a powerful force capable of charging into battle with overwhelming speed and fury to secure victory. This force had to be vast, with a method of creation that could be mass-produced. To achieve this, the Emperor combined the rapid, practical production methods of the Thunder Warriors with the extraordinarily complex, nearly perfect genetic blueprint of his Primarchs. Thus, the Space Marines were born. From the genetic material of each Primarch, a single legion of Space Marines was created. At that time, these legions had not yet received their famous names, but they already displayed many of the physical traits and temperaments of the Primarchs, whose gene seed they carried, even though those Primarchs were still growing up on distant worlds, far from Terra. The first Space Marines appeared near the end of the Unification Wars, helping to eradicate the remaining Thunder Warriors and lay the foundations of the Imperium. In the 41st millennium, Space Marine chapters recruit worthy candidates from the populations of their home worlds. If a chapter is fleet-based, however, it may recruit from any suitable planet along its path. But at the end of the Unification Wars, recruitment was limited to the people of Terra alone, which meant the legions did not grow overnight. At first, each legion consisted of only about 100 Space Marines, but their numbers steadily increased. To transform an ordinary mortal into a tireless warrior of the Imperium, only the strongest, fastest, fiercest, and most intelligent candidates were chosen. The younger the recruit, the better the chances of a successful transformation. Their training began immediately, both physical and mental, while they were gradually implanted with the specialized organs that would ultimately reshape their physiology and transform them into Space Marines. Psychological conditioning was used to enhance a recruit's reflexes, concentration, pain tolerance, and overall control over both mind and body. To accelerate this process, recruits were placed into hypnotic trances using specialized hypno-conditioning equipment known as a hypnomat. I'll cover the Space Marine implants and every stage of their transformation in detail another time. The training and therapy programs were also designed to forge an unbreakable brotherhood among the recruits. As a result, powerful bonds of friendship developed between them, allowing them to fight with exceptional coordination on the battlefield. The grief over fallen brothers and the fury it inspired would go on to win countless battles. The equipment of the Space Marines during the Great Crusade also deserves special attention. The Mechanicum of Mars developed improved armor and weapons based on the equipment once used by the Thunder Warriors. The result was the Mark II Crusade power armor. After its introduction, the Thunder Warriors armor was retroactively designated Mark I. Although it remained usable, it saw only rare service and was primarily reserved for ceremonial purposes. The Mark II was the first fully sealed suit of Space Marine power armor, equipped with an integrated life support system. This allowed Space Marines to fight on worlds with unbreathable atmospheres, as well as in the vacuum of space. Compared to its predecessor, the armor offered significantly greater protection. The external power cables that had run along the outside of the Mark I suit for cooling purposes were relocated beneath the Mark II's chest plate. Thanks to an improved cooling system, they no longer suffered from overheating. Unfortunately, the leg armor still relied on externally exposed power cables, making them one of the greatest vulnerabilities of Space Marines during the early years of the Great Crusade. The helmet featured advanced systems that transmitted data from its optical lenses and audio sensors directly into the wearer's brain after processing it through an onboard cogitator. This enabled a Space Marine to acquire targets almost instinctively, see in infrared and ultraviolet spectrums, operate effectively in complete darkness, automatically dim sudden flashes of bright light, and suppress dangerously loud noises before they could overwhelm the wearer's senses. Mounted on the back of the armor was a power pack that housed the life support system, air recycling unit, medical and nutrient reserves, as well as an array of automated medical devices. This backpack configuration proved so effective that it remained a standard feature of every subsequent pattern of Space Marine power armor. The Space Marine's signature weapon, the bolter, also received a new design known as the Phobos pattern. Each of these bolters was handcrafted by the Magi of Mars, ensuring that every weapon would perform flawlessly in the hands of the Emperor's warriors. By the 41st millennium, Phobos pattern bolters had become exceptionally rare. Those that survived were revered as sacred relics from the glorious age of the Imperium. At last, the Emperor's strike force was ready. The troops had been created, their weapons forged, and their war gear issued. Before long, the Space Marines would have the opportunity to prove their strength and effectiveness in real combat. This campaign would become known as the First Pacification of Luna, and some Imperial chroniclers would later describe it as the First Battle of the Great Crusade. During the Age of Strife, Luna had been left to its own fate, just like Terra. Over the centuries, it became home to numerous techno-religious gene cults that achieved extraordinary advances in genetic engineering and the manipulation of DNA. Yet these were not merely scientific organizations, they were religious sects that sought to understand human nature through the human genome and ultimately reshape all of humanity into what they believed to be the perfect genetic form. The problem was that every cult had its own vision of what the perfect human should be. The Emperor was well aware of Luna's advanced genetic technologies and was determined to claim them for himself. Possessing this knowledge would accelerate the research and production of the Space Marines many times over. For that reason, Luna had to be taken intact. A full-scale invasion or orbital bombardment was out of the question, as they would inevitably destroy the invaluable gene laboratories the Emperor sought to preserve. At first, the Emperor attempted to resolve the conflict through diplomacy. The gene cults refused his offer. Worse still, after being threatened with war, they sent the Emperor's envoys back to Terra, transformed into still screaming masses of translucent flesh, then sealed themselves within their lunar strongholds to prepare for the coming assault. The Master of Mankind was furious. This was the moment when the still small but battle-ready Space Marine legions had their chance to prove themselves. The plan called for a lightning assault, break the enemy's resistance before it could organize and swiftly eliminate the leadership of the gene cults. For this mission, the future 7th, 13th, and 16th Legions were chosen. The attack itself relied on an ingenious strategy. The 16th Legion launched from Terra first, but the moment their ships escaped the planet's gravity, they shut down all onboard power. Like arrows loosed from a bow, the vessels drifted silently through the frozen vacuum toward Luna. Only Space Marines, protected by their fully sealed power armor, could survive such a slow journey through the cold emptiness of space. Frost coated their armor, yet not a single warrior suffered any harm. The other two legions departed shortly afterward. Their ships advanced at full speed with their void shields operating at maximum power, drawing the full attention and fire of Luna's defensive batteries. Meanwhile, the first wave of powerless assault craft reached the lunar installations undetected, launching a surprise attack from within the enemy's defenses. The operation was a complete success. It demonstrated that the Space Marines were more than capable of conquering the galaxy, while the Emperor secured the genetic knowledge and technologies he had sought, allowing him to expand his armies on an even greater scale. With humanity's armies finally prepared, the Emperor gave the order to begin the Great Crusade, personally leading mankind to the edge of the solar system and beyond. Thus began a chain of events that would leave an indelible mark not only on the history of the Imperium, but on the fate of the entire Milky Way galaxy. And it all would begin with the Emperor's meeting with his first and most beloved son, Horus Lupercal. But that is a story for another time.